Week 1 NFL is underway. I'm excited. Welcome back, guys. Chuck Nasty on Fantasy Football here. We're going to recap the Bears and Packers game from Thursday Night Football last night. Go over a couple of stat lines there, anything to be concerned about. And then in the following video, we're going to do some start-em sit-ems for Week 1. But first, just want to go over a couple things with you. I'm going to be doing a live stream on Twitch tomorrow, Saturday, September 7th, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on twitch.tv/ChuckNasty to go over any start-em, sit-ems, lineup questions you guys might have for your teams going into Week 1 on Sunday. Make sure you tune in there. The link will be down in the show notes in the description. Drop a follow on there. You'll know when I'm live, and we can have a conversation about which players to start that week. Hopefully you guys have a good week. So let's dive right into it. The game last night was the polar opposite of what I was hoping for on the season opener of the regular season. Packers beat the Bears 10-3 on the road at Soldier Field, and the game was kind of hard to watch. I mean, Chicago's offense looked like they were still playing preseason. Mitch Trubisky in his second year as a quarterback didn't look good. Overthrew his receivers a ton. Panicked on his reads. You know, anything after the first read. If the first read was covered, it seemed like he just kind of was panicking and throwing the ball away. I guess I don't really understand Matt Nagy's logic in not letting Trubisky play any snaps in the preseason for the Bears because he had all sorts of problems with the offense. Multiple delay of game penalties on snaps. Just all sorts of issues with reads, and it was really tough out there for his receivers to make any plays when, you know, they have such a low quality of targets coming at them. So, I didn't really feel like the Bears looked like they were ready to play offense. There was one specific play where Matt Nagy tried to get tricky. It was a 3rd and 1. And he put in Cordarrelle Patterson instead of David Montgomery, instead of Mike Davis, and he didn't convert on 3rd down. Surprise, surprise. Well, the Bears deserved to lose that game. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And I took him in a pick'em. I didn't bet the spread or anything like that. I would never bet that game since they historically trade matchups each year, but I had to pick one of the teams to win, and I thought the Bears were going to show up at home. Now, their defense looked good, but their offense couldn't do anything to help them. But we'll go over the Bears' backfield to start. So you had Mike Davis had 6 receptions on 17 yards, 6 receptions for 17 yards on 7 targets and 5 rushes for 19 yards. Now, the question that everybody's asking me already is, I'm a David Montgomery owner. Should I be worried? And the answer I think is no. David Montgomery is much more productive with the work that he got in the game last night, and I think this was probably best case scenario. I mean, you didn't want Mike Davis to go out there and get a bunch of work and be really, really productive because then, you know, he can justify having additional work in the following games. But for him to have, 17 yards on 6 receptions and 5 rushes for 19 yards. I mean, it wasn't particularly productive. So I think that's really positive. So when Matt Nagy goes back and looks at the game script and how everything played, he's going to see that David Montgomery, who finished with 1 reception for 27 yards and 6 rushes for 18 yards, looked like the better back. I think that's a big positive for David Montgomery owners. There's a lot of people, especially if you're in fab leagues, to pick up people on the waiver that are going to be blowing their budgets on Mike Davis this week. I wouldn't recommend it. I think that David Montgomery will take over as the starting role. I don't think that it's going to be a big deal that Mike Davis was out there as much as he was yesterday. Now, if he comes out in week 2 and is significantly more productive, then we might have a problem. But in the meantime, I think that Nagy's going to go back. He's going to see what he should have done, and that's play David Montgomery more, and he'll get some more work next week. So you also had Trubisky, who threw 26 passes for 228 yards, 1 interception, and had 3 rush attempts for 11 yards. I don't think I've seen a quarterback look worse this season. Count it. Considering there were only 2 quarterbacks that were playing have played in week 1 of the season so far, it's a pretty safe estimate to say that Mitch Trubisky looked like the worst in the NFL. But just the quality of his targets was really, really unfortunate. I mean, you have a couple of guys like Allen Robinson that played out of their minds yesterday, and there's other guys that were constantly being overthrown, or the reads on the coverages were just wrong. It was not a productive day for Mitch Trubisky. So hopefully you didn't start him in your league. But moving on to the receivers, Allen Robinson looked amazing. I mean, 7 receptions for 102 yards. Imagine if he had a higher quality of targets or a better quarterback throwing him the ball in that game. He could have easily scored a touchdown, maybe get a couple of additional receptions on there. But he looked really, really good. I'm really happy with how he performed. I don't own him on any of my rosters, but I would be starting him pretty much every week until he proves me otherwise, especially in PPR formats. But the other interesting piece was the wide receivers on the field for pass plays. So the number of pass plays that they were on the field for. Allen Robinson, of course, led the team with 55 plus pass plays he was on the field for, followed by Taylor Gabriel with 54, and then Anthony Miller was only on the field for 11 pass plays. So, unless it's a really deep league, I don't see any reason for you to be playing Taylor Gabriel, or maybe you get punt return yards as part of your league scoring format. Then you can maybe plug Taylor Gabriel in like a flex spot or something like that. But otherwise, it's probably too deep for him or Anthony Miller to have any relevance in fantasy yet. I would probably leave them on the bench until you see them actually produce a decent stat line and see where it goes from there. Moving on to the Packers. Now, there was a couple of pieces of the Packers offense that were a little bit concerning, specifically as a Davante Adams owner myself. This was the first game since all of last season where he had less than 80 yards and no touchdown. So basically, throughout the entire season in 2018, he either had 80 yards and a touchdown, 80 yards or a touchdown in each game, which gave him a pretty decent stat line. So he went 4 for 36 on 8 targets. If you're in a PPR league, that's 7.6 target points for him. And the targets were there, but the Green Bay offense really seemed like they were having trouble with the Bears' D. And I don't blame them. The Bears have a very good defense, and that was probably the only part of their game where they're putting a ton of pressure on the Packers' offensive line. And, they're just rushing Aaron Rodgers into some of his reads. So I'm not really that concerned yet. I think that he's going to be safe to fire up in week 2. I don't have any issues with that. The more concerning piece was Geronimo Allison had 0 yards on 0 targets. So I'm sorry if you drafted Geronimo Allison in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th round, or if at all, but it doesn't really look like he's going to be involved in the offense this year. On the flip side of that, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, or MVS, had 6 targets, 4 receptions, 52 yards. He looked like he was the clear number 2 wide receiver in this offense. And the big positive about this before he left with the cramp was they looked like they were actively trying to get him involved. They were running, some bubble screens on the line and stuff like that just to get him more involved in the game, and even some possible, shift plays where he ends up rushing the ball up the field on a swing or something like that. So it seemed like they were really, really interested in getting MVS more involved. Like him a lot in deeper PPR leagues as like a wide receiver 3. He could definitely yield some positive points for your fantasy team as long as he ends up continuing to be the clear number 2 option. So if you got him rostered, I think he's probably going to be pretty good to fire up as a 3rd wide receiver in 3 wide receiver leagues, especially PPR formats. And then, you've got a couple other pieces here. You've got Aaron Jones, who, I was projecting him to have a pretty bad game because the Bears' front, of their defense is just, it's so good. Their defensive ends are so good. They're so fast. They're so strong. Khalil Mack obviously is the biggest component to their defense, and he's just bench pressing guys back into Aaron Rodgers, and the line is collapsing on the run lanes that Aaron Jones had. So I wasn't expecting him to be extremely productive. The leagues that I own him in, I did not play him against the Bears defense because I had a feeling that this was kind of how it was going to go. And for future running backs that are playing against the Bears D, unless it's, a top 1st round pick or something like that, you're probably better off finding another option. they're just so difficult to run against. So he ran 13 times for 39 yards and caught one reception for 0 yards. Good for 4.9 points in PPR format. But ultimately it was because of the tough defense. So I'm not concerned about him next week. I was pretty interested to see Jimmy Graham go 3 for 30 with a touchdown. Most people are not starting Jimmy Graham in redraft leagues, and the ones that are probably realize at this point that he's going to be extremely touchdown dependent, and his value is entirely contingent on him catching a single touchdown in a game. Otherwise, he's not going to put up a stat line that's worth really anything. He looks a lot slower this year than he has in the past, and I think that there are better options that are out there. The Mark Andrews of the world and some of these other players that are going to get a bigger target share that aren't going to be totally touchdown dependent might be a better option. But if you don't have that option, I mean, fire him up. But it's a coin flip as to whether or not he's going to perform each week. So that's all we've got for you guys today. I'm going to be uploading this video tomorrow on Saturday, September 7th in the morning. And just remember, September 7th, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, twitch.tv/ChuckNasty for fantasy Q&A, stardom, situm questions, anything going into Sunday's game. And I'm also going to give you a couple of picks that I have for Sunday's game. So I'm an against the spread kind of guy. And I told myself I was only going to bet 2 or 3 games max each week to try to maximize my profit. Last year I was running roughly 68% against the spread, which was really good for me. So we'll see if that continues this year. But my 2 picks for Sunday are the Kansas City Chiefs minus 3.5, and then they are on the road in Jacksonville. And then I have the Baltimore Ravens on the road at Miami minus 7. So those are my 2 picks for tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you guys in the Twitch stream tomorrow night, September 7th, 7 p.m., twitch.tv/ChuckNasty. We'll see you there. Good luck tomorrow.